All right. Hey, Vikings fans, welcome into another episode of the Skol Hop. I'm Evan.
And I'm Austin.
We're just a couple of dudes from Iowa. We like drinking beer. And we like talking about the Vikings.
We do. And I think I say it every other week. It's one of those things is consistently more fun than the other. But yeah, we are drinking beer.
What'd you bring us?
Yeah.
This is your beer that you brought tonight.
This is. So I have brought us from Backpocket Brewing. Again, we drink Iowa brewed beer on the podcast. And this is a Backpocket Brewing beer. It's a Helles-style blonde lager. It's the Gold Coin. We did a little bit of a pre-taste on TikTok, which we'll release right after we record the episode. But I like it. What do you think?
I mean, I'm this far in right now, and it's pretty good. Can't complain at all.
Yep. I've had a few Backpocket beers. Actually, my sister got me a 6-pack of a different kind of their beer as a part of my Christmas gift. And I had that in my hands, but we do record during the week. And that beer was a 6.7%. And I thought we should probably tone it down a little bit. We're all going back to work. So we'll go with this Gold Coin 5.2%. So a little bit nicer on us in the morning.
Good call.
Yeah.
Good call. Well, thanks for bringing it, and it's delicious.
Of course.
I'm excited to enjoy a few of these and have some good conversation.
Yeah, we'll talk about it a little bit more at the end of the episode.
Yeah. But before we get there, we got to pay the bills.
Mm-hmm.
So today's episode is brought to you by Big Top Ventures. To get the best rates on all-inclusive resorts in Mexico and Jamaica, send an email to bigtopventuresllc@gmail.com. That's bigtopventuresllc@gmail.com, and we'll have that listed below here in the video. It'll also be in the description of the video and the podcast, wherever you get your podcasts as well. So go check them out and send them an email if that's something you're interested in.
Yeah, and I've used them before. They're really good. I highly recommend them as an actual customer and not just a beneficiary of a podcast sponsorship. So yeah, check them out.
And my wife is like nagging me now. She's like, we got to go on a Big Top trip. I'm like, well, we know a guy.
We do know a guy. And don't let that guy hear that your wife is on board. And he's hearing right now, hello, sir. You will probably get a text or something, no?
I'll prepare myself for that.
All right.
Well, we do this to ourselves.
We do. You know what? I blame you, Ev. I blame you for making me care about this darn team so much. This is all your fault.
I thought you were going to blame me for starting Jordan Love and Aaron Jones in fantasy.
I forgot about that. Now, you still started them after all the grief I gave you last week?
Yeah, and I beat you too.
Well, yeah, like I said, fantasy is done. We were playing for what, 5th place?
We still are. We have one more week.
Oh, man.
It's a 2-week playoff.
Oh, man. Yeah. Well, hey, at least nobody can say I rigged it because I technically am the commissioner. I think maybe I made friend of the show, Forrest, also a commissioner. I don't remember if I did. Sorry, Forrest, if I forgot about that. But at least I'm not cheating. Like, at least I'm not rigging it for me to win this free league that we're in.
Quick on-air production meeting.
Skol Hop Fantasy League.
Skol Hop Fantasy League next season.
So this was kind of the Skol Hop Fantasy League.
Was it?
This was the Skol Fantasy League. So did you ever pay attention to the name of the league?
Oh, it makes sense now.
Yeah. It's the super cool outstanding league, I think is what I named it. And I spelled cool with a K. So it was the Skol League.
Nice.
Yeah.
I see what you did there.
Yeah.
It took me 17 weeks to get there.
You would have never got there, and that's surprising. You're the one I almost did it for.
Vikings fan in the league. Oh man. Well,
hey, pre-congrats on beating me and getting 5th place in our league.
Yes.
I assume that's how it's going to happen.
I was predicted to finish last in the league at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, so. Hey, that's pretty good. I think we're an 8-team league, so you almost got halfway. You almost beat half of the people. Congrats. We should probably know who's actually, I think is it Brian and Matt in the championship?
Maybe.
I think they played in the playoffs.
I don't remember.
I don't know who's in the championship. I
think Brian and Forrest are in the 3rd place game.
Are they? Okay.
So,
well, congrats to whoever is in the playoffs and the championship game of the Skol League. I'm very proud of you.
Next season, though, we'll have a Skol Hop fantasy league, and we'll open it up publicly. Anybody that wants to come in and play, we'd love it.
We might have to do some kind of a drawing or something, because I don't want to make it a, if every single one of our fans listens and wants to be in the league, we'd have to have we
could start a couple of leagues.
Yeah,
we'll figure it out.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm on board. A Skol Hop league, let's go. And maybe it's already full. Maybe everybody that's in it this year wants to be in it next year.
Hey, how many can you max out with in a league?
Fantasy's kind of weird because ours is small with 8 teams.
Mm-hmm.
I think the sweet spot is probably 10, because at that point you're getting to the point where there's actually a lot of strategy in it with finding enough starting quality players in the league to be able to put on your team. Any more than 10, that's just getting lucky with a guy, an undrafted rookie that somehow is available for you to pick up. I don't know. People do it.
Sweet. Well, it'll be something we'll do.
Yeah.
And I'm excited for it.
We just successfully avoided talking about the Packer game for that much longer.
Yeah, if we can just keep doing that, I think that would benefit all of us, because there wasn't much worth talking about from that game.
No. What was your first point?
My first point in our show notes here was it was pretty miserable all the way around.
Every single aspect.
Yep. It was bad.
I can't think of a good play.
I typically don't walk away from Vikings games. I walked away from this one.
It was New Year's Eve. I
had family over. We were playing games, and I kept it on. I didn't turn it off.
Yeah.
But I left the room and went to the dining room and played board games with family instead of sitting in front of the TV continuing to be frustrated. And my wife will tell you, I was grumpy the rest of the night. I did not go to bed happy on New Year's Eve.
Yeah. I was okay. We had another couple friends, actually friend of the show, Forrest, and his wife were over for New Year's Eve. We just had a chill New Year's. And we watched the whole game. And I mean, at a certain point, I just had to be a duck and let it roll off my back. They're not going to come back. It's they're not playing the Colts. Okay.
Yep.
You're not going to come back from 30 points down. So I was okay. Disappointed, obviously, but I tried not to let it ruin my night. And I think I did an okay job. Maybe our friends can tell you different if I did an okay job or not. But
so this question just popped into my head, and I'll ask you: do you think the outcome would have been different had Mullins started and played the entire game, as opposed to starting Hall, benching Hall at halftime, and then pulling up Mullins?
I mean, we'll never know, but I think KOC said something today to the tune of, because they announced Mullins is going to start against Detroit next week, or this coming week. KOC said something to the tune of, Mullins knows how to make big plays in the offense, which, I mean, yeah, he got benched, but in the game against Detroit over a week and a half ago now, he had 400 yards passing? It's just those 4 interceptions. That's what did it.
The 4 picks were terrible.
And I wasn't mad. I kind of expected the switch to Hall. I think everybody expected Mullins to be benched for the Packer game. And I feel like that was the right decision. And I don't think you're saying that he shouldn't have been benched.
No. I'm just wondering out loud, would the outcome have been different? Or do you think the outcome would have been different?
Maybe the offense would have been more productive at certain points, but you're still going to have turnovers. I think those interceptions don't just go away. Even if for some crazy reason Mullins starts against the Lions this coming week and they end up winning and he has another 300-400 yards passing, he's going to throw an interception. We're not going to go this whole game without seeing Mullins throw an interception. He very well could be benched again. I mean, you just never know. So I don't know. I think in hindsight, maybe, Mullins was the guy that could have done the most with the offense, but I mean, it wouldn't have mattered on defense. The whole game, the Vikings defense didn't do anything.
Laid over and let the Packers run all over him. It was awful. Enough
that I'm almost not even concerned about losing Brian Flores right now. I still want him as a defensive coordinator. I still think that's a huge thing that's good for the Vikings, especially if he were to be here and have another full off season to get these core guys in the system and learning everything, and maybe morph it a little bit more for the defense. But I mean, I don't know who's chomping at the bit to sign him as their head coach right now after that Packer game.
Anything you see out there is going to be clickbaity at this point.
Yeah.
Like, I think there are rumors flying around, but there's nothing concrete. And if the Vikings are done on Sunday, we'll learn a lot in the next couple of weeks.
Oh yeah. And I guess after all that, I wouldn't be overly surprised if he got a head coaching job. I think he's deserving of it. I just think the performance of the defense hasn't launched him into the stratosphere of like, oh, yep, obviously he's gone now. Like, I think there's some question marks. And ultimately, I think that's good. I think he's still back with the Vikings next year, and I would love that.
There's a lot of question marks going into next season, and we'll talk about those later on. But let's quickly go back to the Packer game really quick, just to maybe tie that up and put a bow on it and move on from it, because it was terrible. Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't the only touchdown that the Vikings scored, wasn't that off of the muffed punt?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, because it was after Mullins came in and after Hall got benched, because you texted me saying, well, he's the only guy that's gotten us into the end zone now. But yeah, I mean, he didn't have to go very far.
And that was a little short-sighted because he didn't have to do much, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the offense looked miserable, just completely lost, disjointed. The running game was awful still.
Yeah, it just, after that Cincinnati game where it looked great, where has it been? Like,
whoever the running game coordinator is probably needs to find a new job next season.
I don't know who that would be. I don't know if the Vikings have a specific passing and running game coordinators. I think it's all just Wes Phillips and then the staff below him. But
right.
Yeah, I'm in watching highlights. I think we saw that maybe Ty Chandler isn't the best pass blocker, which is already going to exemplify a poor quarterback play when he doesn't have any time to look down the field and pass. I mean, if there's a blitzer, he's almost always going to get in. And maybe that was the secret stuff for the Packers this week. I don't know. Just everything was bad. Nothing was good. I don't think you can take anything good away.
And the other thing I'd like to point out is Jordan Love is still Jordan Love. He's playing better.
Yeah.
And he played much better in this game than he did when the Vikings went to Green Bay and just smoked the Packers.
But I'm pretty sure he was the offensive player of the week for the NFC. I think they announced that today.
Oh, from this game?
Yeah.
not surprising.
Yeah.
But like, he still makes mistakes. He still is not the most accurate. Any day of the week, I would take a fully healthy Kirk Cousins.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Over Jordan Love.
Oh yeah.
So, I think he's going to continue to grow into that. But I don't know. A lot remains to be seen with Jordan Love, in my opinion. I don't think we're at Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers level Jordan Love.
Not yet, but how freaking annoying would that be? Like,
it would be terribly annoying.
Like, I thought Colts fans had it good going from Peyton Manning to having one bad year and then getting Andrew Luck. Like, they lucked into that, and then, sorry, Brian, Luck retired. They ran out of luck. But, yeah, for the Packers to potentially go from Hall of Fame quarterback to Hall of Fame quarterback, and now if Love is showing flashes of being okay, like, that's just dumb. That sucks. I'm so annoyed by it.
Chris Collinsworth said it on the broadcast in the game. He said the Packers have figured out the formula to developing quarterbacks. You draft your guy, you sit him for a couple of years under the MVP starter, and then when that guy moves on or retires or whatever, you bring him up and maybe deal with a few games or a half a season's worth of not great play until he adjusts, and then boom, here we go.
Well, I mean, maybe that's a formula the Vikings can
emulate.
Yeah, emulate in the next year or two.
Maybe. Do we want to start talking about that? Because talking about the future is much more exciting than talking about where the Vikings are at right now.
Yeah, I think we put a period on the Packer game. I
would like to point out one more thing.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. And a very two interesting things could develop in this last game of the season. One, which is stupid, we've already talked about it, but Alexander Mattison could finish the season as the leading rusher without a rushing touchdown.
That's crazy.
That's just stupid. So if he doesn't get in the end zone on the ground, it'll be the first time in Vikings history that the team's leading rusher hasn't scored a touchdown on the ground. The other interesting thing has less to do with the Vikings specifically and more to do with the NFC North. There's a chance that the bottom 3 teams in the NFC North finish with the same exact record of 8-9,
which is insane. Which, if you would have told me when the Vikings were 1-4 that they have a chance to be 8-9, I'm super pumped. I'm super happy about that.
And then we tell you also that, oh yeah, and by the way, the Packers and the Bears could also be 8-9.
Yeah. Yeah. I wish I could go back in time and talk to August Austin and just be like, dude, you're in for it this year. Like, so much stuff is going to happen, that so much that you're going to forget half of it right at the new year, and it's still going to be terrible.
We'll just go back and listen to our podcast again.
Oh man, sorry, past Austin. This season sucks for you. And all that to say, there is still a very small, minute, never going to happen outside chance that the Vikings make the postseason.
Those odds are very small, yes. The road map to get there, though, has been laid out by Dustin Baker.
Yeah, friend of the show, Dustin Baker.
So the Vikings have to win. The Bears have to beat Green Bay, which if the Vikings win and the Bears win, that creates the 3-way record tie in the NFC North for second place, which is absolutely dumb. And I don't know that that's ever happened in the NFL.
I'm sure it has.
Has it?
In the NFL, I'm sure. It's probably not as crazy as you think, but it's still pretty crazy.
Anyways, Vikings, Bears need to win, and then the Cardinals need to beat the Seahawks, which the Cardinals beat.
They just beat Philly.
Philly, yeah. So anything's possible there. And then the Saints or the Bucks need to lose.
Dustin Baker also tweeted and basically said, if you put, I think he said $100 on that parlay bet. Maybe he said 10. No, he said 100. If you put $100 on all of those things to happen, it would pay out something like $4,000.
Wow.
I put $5 on it. So
you'll have to let us know how
that
happens.
It's something like between $500 and $600 payout.
Wow.
It's not going to happen. I've donated $5 to wherever sports gambling money goes to in Iowa, but yeah, it'll still be fun to watch. And can you imagine? I don't expect it. The Vikings are going to get like the 10th pick, and that's what it's going to be.
Crazy. Well, with that, let's talk about the future, and let's talk about what do they do right now before these final games of the season. The Vikings are sitting at the 12th pick, I think, right?
I think I've heard that, yeah.
Something like that. And I think they can fluctuate up or down depending on what happens in week 18. And depending on if they make the playoffs and if they win, which they
could
won't,
be as bad as in the like low 20s, or as good, depending on how you're looking at it, as I think number 9 is the highest they can get as a draft pick. So they're really, and I think that's a testament to the NFL as a whole this year, that there's so many teams right around that 500-ish area that there's a lot that can happen for the draft order. But yeah, I mean, draft-wise, really, that's a step ahead. Quarterback-wise, against Detroit, we got Nick Mullins again, and who knows how many snaps he'll get. Hopefully he plays the whole game. Hopefully they win, and hopefully those other 4 things happen, and we're talking about a playoff team. That's what I want. I want my team to win.
That would be amazing. Yes.
And they can figure the draft out later. I'm not saying Kwesi's going to figure it out and we're going to still end up with the third pick and get the quarterback of the future. I don't care about that yet. This season's not done. So I'm hoping for the crazy not going to happen scenario to happen. The Vikings play, they win against Detroit, and they make the postseason. Although Detroit, they can still get as high as the number 2 seed.
So they do have a little bit to play for, but they need help, right?
Yeah.
It's not just win and get it. They've got to win, and they need help from, is it Dallas?
Yeah, so Detroit, for them they're basically locked into the number 3 seed right now, which would have them play the 6th seed in the playoffs, whoever that would be. But they could get as high as number 2, and that's if Detroit wins and Dallas loses at Washington and Philadelphia loses at the New York Giants. I feel like that's a higher scenario than the Vikings making the playoffs.
More likely, you're saying?
Yeah. So all that to say, Detroit's, I think Dan Campbell even came out and said, like, yeah, starters are, everyone's playing. Like, we're still trying to win this game. So I respect that. So either way, it'll be Nick Mullins at Detroit. And then what? Then what do the Vikings do? We kind of have essentially 3 categories of options, right? I think category 1, which I wouldn't be mad about, is you re-sign Kirk.
So now we're talking next season.
Yeah. This is quarterback after this season.
Okay.
You re-sign Kirk, which is going to be pricey. Even if he gives a hometown discount, his hometown discount is going to be like $30 million, like, if not more. And then it takes the immediate pressure off of drafting the guy right away, trading up in the draft, doing whatever you have to do to get anybody. Name any of the 5 or 6 top quarterbacks that are available this year.
Penix, Nix, Daniels,
McCarthy. Yeah, any of them. Like, that kind of takes the pressure off of having to get one of those right away. So maybe you still draft a quarterback, but it doesn't have to be in the top 10 of the first round. But even in that scenario, if you sign Kirk and you kind of draft a quarterback, maybe the second tier guy, you should still sign somebody else to be the backup, right? Because as of right now, Jaron Hall is the only quarterback that's under contract for next season. Everybody else, their deal ends. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that kind of a scenario?
So to recap, you're saying Kirk walks, they draft a guy, and Hall stays as the backup?
In the first one I just said, it was sign Kirk.
Sign Kirk, okay.
And then either Hall is your number 2, or you re-sign Mullins, or who knows, Gardner Minshew or something like that. Some kind of a number 2 guy that you sign, and then you draft a guy maybe with less pressure to be the top guy. Maybe you draft defense with your first pick, and then you look at quarterback elsewhere.
I think I've said this before, and I'll stick to my guns. I think Kirk is the quarterback that's going to bring the Vikings the most success.
Okay.
Given the current coaching staff, the current roster, and I know the roster will change next year, but the bones of it will remain largely the same, especially on offense, I think. The defense will change a lot, I think, next year. There's going to be a lot of turnover there.
Yeah, there definitely could be.
But I think Kirk Cousins is your guy to get you to the playoffs, if that's what you want. And I don't know any Vikings fans out there that don't want the Vikings in the playoffs.
There's a lot right now saying they don't want them in. They're rooting for a loss against Detroit this week.
Right. And yeah, it's been a tough 6 weeks. We've dropped 5 out of 6 games. The only win was that 3-0 win against the Raiders.
Which I don't know how that happened after seeing the Raiders since then, but yeah.
Anyways, yeah. In my eyes, Kirk is the answer, and he proved that until he got hurt.
Yeah.
And we will always talk about this season and always wonder what could have been if that hadn't have happened. I mean, we were rolling against the Packers before he went down at Lambeau Field.
Yeah, I think that's one of the few that was a win that wasn't a one-score game.
I think that was like one of 2 games.
Yeah.
This season.
They still won by 14 points, yeah.
One score, other than this most recent pack.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, Kirk's my guy.
Okay.
Going forward. Now, I don't necessarily have an opinion on sign him for a year, sign him for 2 years, sign him longer than that. You know, I understand that there are a lot of logistics to be worked out that way. I saw something out there today that his dead cap hit for next season's pretty lofty.
Yeah, he's still an expensive player for the Vikings, no matter what.
Even if he's gone.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, in my eyes, why not keep him? I mean, he proved that he can play at a high level, and I think he'll come back from this injury. And
I was going to ask you your thoughts on that too, if the injury itself, because it sounds like you're not concerned about his quality of play through the injury after he comes back.
I'm really not, especially when you consider the fact that he's a pocket quarterback.
Yeah.
He's a pocket passer. He's not a Lamar Jackson. He's not a Michael Vick. He's not a running back, right? He's not Justin Fields, right? So he doesn't have to put as much pressure on his leg and on his Achilles to move around. Yeah, there will always be that kind of like fear in the back of his mind, in the back of his coach's mind, our minds as fans, like, you know.
I just remember in Adrian Peterson's comeback year, 2012, every time he got tackled, I remember me like always thinking like, oh, are you okay, man?
Yeah.
And he always was. He had the second best running back season of all time that year. But yeah.
Well, I'm sitting here looking at this poster that my sister and my brother-in-law made for me for my birthday this year.
Yeah.
And I'm reminded of one of the few Kirk Cousins rushing touchdowns.
Oh, yeah.
And we witnessed it together from a similar angle in the stadium. Yeah, we were right up in that corner there. And, it was against the Cardinals in 2022. I don't know that he makes plays like that moving forward, knowing just kind of the conservative player that he is already. He's going to be much more reluctant to run the ball himself unless there's like a gap the size of a Mack truck that you can just, plow your way through and get a first down or whatever. But I think given his style of play, the injury won't really matter. And I think he's got, 5 years of football left in him, give or take.
Definitely could. I wouldn't be mad with that scenario, but there's a few other ones. You actually, in our notes, you put a really good tweet if you want to kind of give a gist of that.
Yeah, so Jason777, he's the self-proclaimed Twitter CEO of Arizona, I believe, according to his profile. But he's really active on Vikings Twitter, and I've appreciated a lot of his stuff. So he's got 3 different QB scenarios going into 2024, and he's given them some creative titles. So his first is Back to the Future, and he says, don't re-sign Kirk, draft a top quarterback, sign a cheap veteran. So that would be like your Gardner Minshew or whoever would be available to kind of bridge the gap. Likely take a step back in 24, but it would lead to significant cap space and flexibility for future years with the hopes of the quarterback that we draft kind of learning and acclimating quickly.
And you said he has 3 scenarios here. I don't know if he's saying like in order what he would want or what he thinks will happen. He's just kind of outlining some possible scenarios the Vikings could go down.
He did say in the comments below which one he thought was the worst, and I'll tell you what that one is in a minute. The second one is chips all in. He says basically the plan since 2018 was to keep Kirk, draft defense, and plan to win right now. It would limit cap space after key extensions, which we know because Danielle Hunter's going to get paid or needs to be paid, especially after being voted to the Pro Bowl today.
Yeah.
One of 2 Vikings, which that seems
A little
hilariously
disappointing.
low.
Yeah.
And JJ, of course, will need to be paid as well.
Mm-hmm.
He says, he continues here, it would make free agency a challenge. It would require near perfection in the draft. And running this back again would likely mean the fan base will be livid if it doesn't work next season.
Exactly.
If it does, everyone's ecstatic.
Yeah,
it's a very polarizing reality.
Can you imagine if they bring Kirk back and
we go 8-9 again?
Well, not even that, but if he is a full season of the first 4 weeks of this 23 season, like if he comes back at a big number and just isn't it there, he just throws interceptions and is awful. I'm not expecting that to happen, but can you imagine? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that would be terrible. Now and later is the last scenario here. And I think this is probably where I would land. Middle ground for both of the previous options. Bring back Kirk on a short and team-friendly deal. Draft a future QB in the first. And try to be as competitive as possible in 24 with development focus for the young quarterback behind the scenes. Would bring cap flexibility in 25, 26 when the new quarterback is ready to take over. To me, that seems like the best option. So the chips all in was Jason's.
The chips all in, the idea of bringing Kirk back, basically doing the plan since Kirk came here.
Yep. Just keep re-signing him to a couple of years at a time.
Yep. And I think in that one, he outlines not drafting a quarterback.
Which would mean the deal that Kirk signs would not be team-friendly. It would be a savvy businessman, Kirk Cousins. I'm going to maximize whatever I can get out of this organization because that's the type of businessman I am.
And good for him.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think Kirk is going to get paid this offseason. And good for him. But he is not going to sign for $20 million anywhere. Like, unless there's some crazy, like, Shohei Ohtani deal that they figure out how to sign him for 20 this year and give him $1 million a year for the next 100 years or something like, I don't know. But he's going to get paid. And I think the most likely place for him to take quote unquote less money is with Minnesota. But like I said, I think that less money is
not going to be much less.
It's at least 30, right? Like, and I'm not smart on all this. I'm not super knowledgeable on everything, but like, I mean, these quarterbacks are signing. Look at, I mean, yes, it's always the best quarterbacks signing mega deals, but like Jackson and Hurts last year, they both signed at one point when they signed the biggest deals in NFL history. Kirk is going to get paid. He's going to get money. So I'd be happy if Kirk was the quarterback, but I don't know if that would be the healthiest thing for money-wise for the Vikings.
I think a 1-year contract would make a lot of sense, especially after the injury. And Kirk's people probably would push back against that because there's less stability there, less of a guarantee. But even if it's a 1-year deal, he still has money on the books for a couple seasons from now. I think it's not just next year that he's got dead money on the books.
And I don't know how that works as far as like getting paid. I know he gets paid, but it's just like spreading out the actual idea of those dollars.
But I think the contract that he's on right now, they kind of mortgaged the future a little bit and said, yeah, your contract will expire March 31st of 24, but we'll keep paying you until 25 or 26 or whatever.
However the cap works, yeah. I don't know. I don't know if signing him is the smartest idea. I would tend to lead towards do everything you can to get the guy you think is the best quarterback in the draft this year. And even if that means mortgaging your draft picks of the future, and however high you need to get that guy. Maybe the guy you want is not widely seen as the best guy. Maybe they want Jaden Daniels, but the number one clear-cut pick is going to be Penix or whoever it is. So maybe they can afford to be at like Yeah, be at like the 3, 4, 5 spot. But if you have to give 3 first-round picks to get there, like if that's your guy, go do it. Because picks are cheaper than 1 year of Kirk.
True.
It's just that's a huge disadvantage if you miss. If you get your guy and he's the one you wanted and you mortgage the future as far as draft picks goes, and then he's terrible, that's a bad luck.
And that's where, like, to me, the gamble in the draft just isn't worth it. And you can go back in the history of the Vikings organization and look at all of the terrible picks. Like, Christian Ponder's probably at the top of that list.
That seemed like a panic pick.
But, like, he's not the only one. He's not the only quarterback that was drafted way higher than he should have been and turned out to be a gigantic bust for the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, I mean, even Teddy Bridgewater.
Yeah, and that was really no fault of his own. It wasn't that he was a bad player. He was actually a really good player.
He was starting to blossom a little bit, and then his knee disintegrated.
Yeah. And he's not been the same player since, and I think he's retiring. I think he's announced that he's done at the end of the season.
He's with Detroit, right?
He might be.
Yeah, I think he is. But yeah, I don't know. We haven't seen, I guess we've seen our GM draft a quarterback once already, but he was a 5th rounder in Jaron Hall. And if you're drafting a quarterback in the 5th round, that's not typically Tom Brady. Like,
right.
It's a flyer that you're taking and you're basing it off film and based off of the little bit of playing time he's had this year. Jaron Hall, it hasn't worked.
Yeah.
And I don't foresee him being a starter. I think his ceiling is Josh Dobbs, which is not a great place to be.
Agreed. Well, there's a lot of interesting scenarios moving forward, and we're on opposite sides of the fence, which is fine. But we don't sit in those chairs and we don't make those decisions.
And Vikings fans should be very happy that it's neither one of us making those decisions, because I'm happy to be a fan.
you have to think that Kwesi is he is carefully examining as much game film as he can for any and all of those top guys: Penix, Bo Nix, Jaden Daniels, J.J. McCarthy. I mean, the list goes on. It's a very rich quarterback draft class. I've seen mock drafts that have like 3 or 4 quarterbacks going in the first 5 picks.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
the top 10 is going to be heavy quarterbacks.
Yeah, it's crazy. So,
and the Vikings may be one of those.
He's going to do his homework. He's going to walk into the Vikings draft room on draft day with a lot of knowledge.
Hopefully.
Whether or not he's able to make the right call or not, that remains to be seen. And Kirk's contract has to be figured out before that.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah, there's I sent you an article from, I think June is when it was written. Basically, the window to be able to franchise tag a player opens and closes before Kirk's contract officially expires. And apparently the way rules work out with all of that is your contract has to be expiring or already have expired or some weird status of expiring in order for you to be eligible to be franchise tagged. So Kirk has a no trade clause in his contract. I don't think there's anything about not being able to be franchise tagged in the wording of his contract. But I think just the timing of when his contract actually voids, because it's before the end of the league year, but it's still active during a weird part. Essentially, he cannot be franchise tagged at all.
That's really interesting, actually.
Yeah. And the article even pointed out too, money-wise, even if he were eligible to be franchise tagged, it would be based off of like a $36 million salary plus like 60% more, because it would be like his 3rd time being tagged and you get a percentage higher every time you're tagged. not just with one team throughout your entire career. So it would be a crazy amount of money, like 60 million. What's 60% of 30? I mean,
I'm an English teacher,
almost
man.
20. So, I mean, you're probably looking almost $50 million just to franchise him, if that even had been an option, which it's not. So, yeah, I mean, you're not franchise tagging him. If he's going to be the quarterback for the Vikings next year, more than likely we will know that before the end of the league year. And if we don't know it by then, there's going to be teams competing to sign him, because somebody will sign him. I mean, who's a quarterback? Who is it? Not
Pretty
Arizona.
much any team in the AFC, because like half of the AFC teams ended up at least starting a different quarterback than they started the season with at some point during the year.
I mean, the Falcons, who are an NFC team, come to mind for me. The Steelers come to mind for me.
His wife is from Atlanta, too.
Yeah, so there's going to be other teams that are at least going to look. So there's going to be competition, and anytime there's competition, that price just goes a little bit higher.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy or cheap to sign Kirk, which is why that's not my initial want as a fan, just because I know it mortgages the rest of the team. But as a player, oh my gosh, he's great. I'd love to have him as a quarterback. It's just I don't think it makes the most sense when it comes to the dollars. So we'll see. Again, great thing that we don't have to make that decision. We just get to watch the games and drink and complain, and you guys get to hear us quote unquote argue about it on our podcast.
Well, there's a lot to figure out between now and the draft for sure. And then what they do in the draft will be a whole other thing. And we'll definitely be talking about the draft on future episodes when we get
maybe as early as a week from now.
Yeah.
Although in the playoffs, I think we're going to kind of turn into a playoff type podcast. Like, we're always going to be Vikings focused, but
we'll talk about the games that have happened. And you've been having fun posting some TikToks and things on mostly injuries, but other kind of funny and crazy things that have happened that you've noticed during NFL games and college games for that matter.
Yeah, well, the college was really just a couple of games in the playoffs there. But yeah, those injury ones, they seem to do well on TikTok. I don't know. Me and the other 7 million people that watch that video seem to like having gruesome injuries happen right in front of them. So
that one was especially bad.
That's why it got 6.9 million views.
Keaton Mitchell's knee just like went a different direction.
Went the other way.
Not go.
Yeah.
It was bad. But yeah, we'll still be doing episodes throughout the playoffs, regardless of if the Vikings are there or not.
We still got one more game. Season's not dead. Playoffs aren't completely out of reach. They're mostly out of reach. It would be a crazy scenario, but it could happen. Crazier things have happened. The Vikings were down one time, 33-0 against the Indianapolis Colts one time. And what happened there, Ev?
Brian left. That's what happened.
Brian left. Thanks, Brian. You left, and it enabled the Vikings to mount the biggest comeback in NFL history. Before I go to sleep tonight, I'm ordering that commemorative plaque.
Are you really?
I'm going to. I have to.
We're going to hang it in here somewhere?
It's a Skol Cave piece that has to live here because we mentioned it just about every episode.
Speaking of, we have a new addition here.
Yeah.
If you're watching us.
Yeah. Big Top Ventures gifted us a signed purple Dante Culpepper jersey a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I think it was like 3 or 4 episodes ago now.
Yep. And we now have it. I don't think you can see it on TikTok right now. But if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify, right above me here. Yep. And maybe we'll take a picture and post it up on Instagram too. Evan got a really nice case for it, and we've got it mounted up on the wall. It looks beautiful.
Yeah, it looks pretty sharp. The display case came yesterday.
Yeah.
And so got that out of the box. And I was actually nervous. So I was like, I hope this didn't get damaged. The box was kind of looking a little raggedy. Man.
Was it Amazon?
Yeah.
That can happen sometimes.
So, but it was okay. It turned out all right, and it looks sharp. I'm pleased with how it looks.
Yeah,
so.
I like it a lot.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Thanks, Big Top, for the cool piece, the cool addition to the Skol Cave. It's nice.
We have 2 signed jerseys now.
Yeah, we do.
In the Skol Cave.
Yeah.
I say we. They're yours.
Well, they will always be a part of this.
Yes. So yes, they will. All right. So the Lions game. I think there's some points we should probably bring up.
Well, we say this, and you put this in here every freaking week.
Yeah, key point number 1 is don't turn the ball over.
Don't turn the ball over.
We say it every freaking week.
Can we just not do that?
Yeah, that'd be great. If you could just not give the ball to the other team.
It's
insert
like
quarterback's name here. Insert
Michael
running
Scott
back's name
talking
here.
to Toby. Like, can you just be cool? Just this once. Just be cool.
Seriously. Yeah. So if they can, and my point that I made many, many, many weeks ago is still holding true. If they go a full game without committing a turnover, they will win. They won every game. I think it's like 2 that they haven't given the ball away. So if they can not turn the ball over, I mean, numbers say they're going to win. What else we got? We got to
establish the run game, which an interesting development happened yesterday, I think.
Yeah.
Dalvin Cook was released by the Jets. It sounds like it was an amicable split.
Yeah, I think he was just saying, guys, let me go. Maybe I can latch on with a playoff team. You're not using me. Yeah.
So I'm not saying the Vikings pick him up this week, but let's say the Vikings do squeak their way into the playoffs. You look at bringing Dalvin Cook back for a playoff run?
I mean, I don't think it's a terrible idea. He had a decent year last year. He was just expensive. I think he was going to cost like almost $15 million this year.
Well, this would be the way to do it with Dalvin Cook. I mean, if you can get him on a dime after the Jets have kind of chewed him up and spit him out, if he's healthy and ready to play.
And I think Tom Pelissero said he's got fresh legs from not being utilized too much. And then Arif Hassan was like, what do you mean fresh legs? If he was good, he would have been used. Like he just kind of laughed at the idea of fresh legs. But I don't know. And there's also I think there's some specific rules as far as waiver claims and who can be signed after being cut. There might be something, even if the Vikings were to crazy sneak into the playoffs and he was still a free agent after these next few games or this next week of games, I think there might be some kind of weird NFL rule that he couldn't be signed. I don't know enough about that to be sure, but there could be something about that. I think if you make the playoffs and he's still out there and it's allowed, you at least talk about it, right? He's a good player. It's just for whatever reason he couldn't get on the field.
Yep.
I don't see it happening though. Definitely not if you don't make the playoffs, and then maybe if you do, but I don't know. Either way, the Vikings run game needs some help.
Yes, it needs a lot of help, especially if we've already said this, but your leading rusher on the season hasn't found the end zone.
Yeah.
Like, what is going on?
Yeah. Yeah,
it's terrible.
And that's another thing to look at heading into next year. I think it would be insanely dumb to go into next year with your plan for the number 1 running back to still be Alex Madison.
Agreed.
But that's a topic for another time.
Well, and that could be a draft pick too. I mean,
yeah,
there's a few good options out there.
And running backs are cheap. I mean, yeah. Don't pay running backs. Maybe Dalvin's an option for next year. He's starting to get up there, and obviously it didn't work out for the Jets this year, so maybe that's not a good idea, but you never know.
Yeah. That's an interesting possibility, though.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, I didn't expect him to be released. I think we all expected Aaron Rodgers to be healthy and Dalvin Cook to be kind of the balance to that offense. Mm-hmm. Aaron's going to light it up whenever he takes the field, and then when you need some running plays here and there, here's Dalvin Cook, who had a great career in Minnesota, and I think he's still very capable.
Definitely could be, yeah.
But anyways, the last key to success here
against the Lions,
defense.
Yeah, which defense shows up? Is it going to be the defense that held apparently an offensive juggernaut in the Raiders to 0 points? Or is it going to be the defense that let Jordan Love look like the third coming of a Hall of Fame quarterback for Green Bay?
Right.
I mean, I don't know.
It's been very bipolar.
Yeah. And on the defensive front, I mean, this very well could be Harrison Smith's last game as a Viking. I hope not. He does seem like a guy that would take just stupid, cheap deal just to stay in Minnesota.
He did it
Not
this
that
year.
he should, but he seems like he might.
He did it this year.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot. You mentioned it earlier today. There's a lot of question marks for the defense. As much as you're questioning the quarterback situation, almost every position group on the defense has major question marks for next year. But yeah, for Detroit, who's showing up? I don't know.
Does Anthony Barr get on the field more than he has in the few games that he's been back with the Vikings?
I honestly haven't even paid attention to that. I know he was signed to the active or the 53-man roster before the Packer game, which still holds true. I don't think he's been cut. Maybe. I mean, I don't know. If he made the field a bunch in the Packer game, it didn't matter. I mean, the defense looked horrible.
True. Yeah, I didn't really pay attention that much either.
Yeah.
But
we'll see. I don't know. Either way, all that to say, if they do end up winning and the other 4 or 5 games go the way of the Vikings and they squeak their way into the playoffs, it's probably not going to look great. Like, you're probably either playing Detroit. Well, it wouldn't be Detroit because they wouldn't be the number 2 seed. It would be like Philly or
and it would be a
Dallas.
road game.
It would be a road game. It would be ugly. You're not going to win. But I still want them to get to the playoffs. I still want it.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm okay losing a wild card game. That's fine.
Yeah, just get there.
Be
Because
a
you
good-
never know.
Be a good consolation.
Yeah, but you never know. Once you
Right.
get there, you can't win the Super Bowl if you don't get to the playoffs. If you get there, yeah, maybe it's unlikely, but at least you're in the dance. Just get there.
Yep. Yeah, it'll be an interesting game. And you mentioned it earlier, the Lions still have something to play for, so it's not like they've locked up the number 1 seed or locked up the number 2 seed even. Like, they're playing for that too, I think.
Yeah,
And they
number
want that
1 has
too.
already been locked up by San Fran. But they're not crazy out of it for the number 2 seed, which, I mean, without the extra bye week, like, it's not like it helps that much because it's just depending on who you're playing.
It guarantees that they would play at home for 2 weeks if they won.
If they won. Yeah, I guess that's true.
So I think that's the big advantage. And then, if it did come down to a 1 and 2, then they'd have to travel to San Francisco. But
yeah, it's always good to be the higher seed.
yep. And so, yeah, they have something to play for, and they're not just going to put their B team out there and take a loss to the Vikings.
Yeah. And I think even if they were 0-16 right now, Dan Campbell wouldn't put a team out there that wasn't going to
bite some
compete.
kneecaps.
Yeah. If that guy, that first press conference he had when he was hired and he was saying bite kneecaps and he just looked like a meathead and whatever.
Super red face.
Everybody made fun of him, and I did too. And almost ever since, every time he has opened his mouth in front of the media or done anything, I've just liked him a little bit more. Like,
I think
he
he's a good
seems like a
coach.
player's coach, a guy that can motivate people, and he seems genuine. The Lions have a good coach, and darn it, they might be a problem for a while. They were this year. They're the division champs.
They were
Can't
the
take
second
that
half of
away.
last year, too.
Oh,
so.
yeah. They almost beat the Vikings in the first game last year, too, when the Vikings came back and won. But, oh well. I like Dan Campbell as a guy. He seems like a good coach. Lions fans have a lot to root for.
Agreed. Well, it'll be an interesting game.
Yeah.
It was kind of telling that the league didn't do anything with that game in terms of timing and what slot. It's a noon game, just normal, straight up, which I think actually helps the Vikings. I think business as usual, no primetime game.
They still have to travel. It's still to Detroit. But
Yeah, but other than that, it's business as usual, right? Like, you show up, you play. It is Eastern time zone, but that doesn't matter too much, I don't think. Like, I think maybe the league may have had their eye on this one when
if it
they
had been
created
for
the
division,
schedule.
yeah.
And if it would have come down to the division, they may have flexed that to a Sunday night game or something like
Maybe.
that to bring in that national audience. But Nope, we get the regular old noon game on Sunday, which is fine. I'm okay with that.
That'll be good. I was trying to figure out today how to rig Paul Allen's game call through my TV, but I don't think where we're located it's even possible.
Well, I remember like several years ago being frustrated that I couldn't watch. This was before Sunday Ticket was more available than it is now. But I remember like downloading like iHeartRadio and TuneIn or something like that, like these radio apps to tune into KFan because I knew they would have the play call and they black out NFL games.
But I think if you're in the market, like if we were in Minneapolis and we pulled up the iHeartRadio app, like we'd be able to listen to it.
So if anybody out there has a tricky VPN strategy to get us into a Minneapolis IP address, we'd appreciate that. We'd take your tech knowledge and apply it for nothing bad.
No, yeah. It's just, I don't know who's calling the Vikings game this week, but I'll tell you what, if I ever have to hear Jonathan Vilma announce a Vikings game ever again, I'll just watch it on mute. I don't care. I'll pull up Tom Grossi's live stream. I don't care.
Hey, Tom Grossi, we like that guy.
Yeah, we do.
We owe Tom Grossi something.
A little bit. He gave us a little foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a good guy. And for as much as I detest his set of Packers stuff, and
it's probably inspired a little bit of the Skol Cave.
It has a little bit. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah,
but I like listening to him. He's good.
Yeah, he's a good character to follow.
Yep.
What have you thought of the Backpocket gold coins?
Well, I'm down farther than you are, so
yeah,
it's been good. It's been really good. It's just easy drinking. It's nothing fancy. I'm not gonna say that it's like the world's greatest beer ever, but beer doesn't have to be fancy.
No, it's really good. I think it's a really good, simple beer, and I think that's probably what they were going for.
Yeah.
I like it a lot. I will have more. It's a good one.
It's good stuff. Well, we got a lot to look forward to, even if the Vikings are done after Sunday. The future looks good. There's some upside.
There is upside.
So we'll be optimistic about what could happen to our favorite team, and we can also be slightly optimistic that they'll squeak their way into the playoffs too.
It's still a chance. Until it's out, it's a possibility.
Yep. Well, this has been fun. It's been a good beer.
Yeah. I think we're ready to close it out. Yeah. So until next time.
Skol.
Skol.
Hey Vikings fans, Evan here from the Skol Hop, and we just wanted to say thank you again so much for listening to the Skol Hop, and we also wanted to take one more opportunity to let you know that this episode of the Skol Hop has been brought to you by Big Top Ventures. If you're considering taking an all-inclusive trip to either Mexico or Jamaica, reach out to our friends at Big Top Ventures at bigtopventuresllc@gmail.com. Once again, that's bigtopventuresllc@gmail.com. You can get the lowest rate possible on several all-inclusive resorts throughout the region. Big Top Ventures. Step right up to your next big adventure. And thanks again for listening to the Skol Hop. Skol.